630,000 blocks. A number 12 years in the making, and which will likely result in one of the largest bull markets that we have seen on Bitcoin in years. Let's back up a minute. First of all, let's get this out of the way. Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about the Bitcoin halving that will be taking place a couple of hours after this video goes live. At the time of recording this video, we are currently on block 629,966. In 5 odd hours, one of the biggest fundamental developments in the history of Bitcoin will be taking place. In 34 blocks from the time of recording this video, the block reward on Bitcoin is going to be changing for only the third time in the history of the cryptocurrency from 12.5 to 6.25 Bitcoin. And if you don't know what that means, you're about to find out here in today's video. This is one of the biggest fundamental developments that Bitcoin has seen in years, and most certainly is going to be one of the biggest news story of the year of 2020 for the cryptocurrency industry. I highly encourage you to continue watching this video because you need to know what's going on today, why it's important, and the impacts it will have on the future of the cryptocurrency market. As always, guys, you're going to get a lot of value out of this video, so if you do enjoy today's video, consider hitting that like and subscribe button down below. But without much further ado, guys, let's go ahead and dive right on into it. It all started back on January 3rd, 2009. It was on that day, over 11 years ago, that the very first Bitcoin was mined on the SHA-256 protocol that would kick off the genesis of the digital currency industry following the 2008 financial crisis. 2009, as you guys will remember, was in the depths of the financial crisis. Banks were collapsing, unemployment was through the roof, the stock market was tumbling, real estate was crashing, the construction industry was falling, and the entire world was being upended. There were many reasons why that financial crisis happened, and it's not all too surprising that it did. What you have to understand is that there were many people that went through the 2008 financial crisis, and they never recovered, myself and my family being one of them. Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people would never fully recover from the financial hardship and the upending of their lives that were brought about during the 2008 financial crisis. And it's for that reason that Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin back in the late 2000s. But what does this blue line right here representing the halving that's about to take place even mean? Is it even important? Guys, I'm not here to say that the Bitcoin halving is important. You already know that. I'm here to explain why the Bitcoin halving is important. Every 4 years, more specifically every 210,000 blocks on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is roughly every 4 years, a halving will take place. And what happens when a halving takes place is that the amount of Bitcoin that are created by mining is cut in half. At first, it was 50 Bitcoin. Then it was 25 Bitcoin. Right now, for the next 5 hours, it's 12.5 Bitcoin. Following that, it'll be 6.25 Bitcoin. Extrapolate that out by dividing by 2 every 4 years into the future. That event right there, the fact that the halving was coded into Bitcoin, has untold consequences on the entire future of the human race, let alone on the digital currency market. It means that, one, Bitcoin is a deflationary currency instead of an inflationary currency like every single fiat currency on the planet. It also means that Bitcoin mining is an industry that you can make money in, but only for a little while can you make it from the creation of Bitcoin. Eventually, it'll have to be replaced by fees. It means the injection of liquidity into the Bitcoin ecosystem is not controlled by the Federal Reserve or the Central Bank of China or the European Union's bank. It means that it's controlled by an algorithm that was set into place many years ago that cannot be changed except for something like 90% of all of the miners agreeing on it. And most importantly, what it represents, in my opinion, is innovation. You see, I'm not necessarily here to even talk about the financial consequences of the halving. There is no doubt that the next 2 to 3 years are going to be bullish as a result of the halving. History has proven that. The fundamentals of Bitcoin are proving that. The bullishness we've experienced in the last 60 days prove that. More importantly than the financials and the ability to profit from this, as we talked about in yesterday's video, money is not going to answer all of your questions. It's not going to fix all of your problems. The thing that interests me more is the innovation that's being driven here. Because you see, over the last 150 years, 200 years, 250 years, ever since the Industrial Revolution, and even before then, you could argue around the Protestant Reformation, there has been untold innovation culturally, religiously, technologically, societally, across the board. But one thing that hasn't evolved quite as fast, and certainly over the last several decades hasn't evolved quite as fast, is the financial institutions. Guys, the current banking system that we have right now comes from Italy. The term banking, it sounds kind of close to bench. That's because originally banking was done as an exchange of all the different kinds of coins that were going on in all of the different principalities in the peninsula of Italy. The word banking comes from the word bench because many times these exchanges would happen on benches. Thus, the industry of banking was born. I'm oversimplifying that, but that was essentially where this all started. You fast forward and all of a sudden, instead of having individual lenders, you have institutions that will lend you money so that you can buy a merchant vessel, so that you can purchase furs to go and sell them in Egypt, so that you can do commerce. Over the centuries, banking developed into a far more complicated and intricate system that now our entire global economy is based on top of. We've learned many things along the way. Many of the things that we did wrong in the 1920s that led to the Black Tuesday crash in 1929, which historians argue led to the Great Depression, we've learned from those. Many of the things that happened in the 1970s, we have learned from those. Many of the incorrect banking practices, such as subprime mortgages and lending that happened in the late 2000s, leading to the 2008 financial crisis, have been rectified. But there is one thing I don't see being rectified anytime soon in our banking system, and it's this. Shout out to Carl from the moon. Value of $100 if you had have hodled since 1913. In 1913, your $100 was worth $100. 40 years later, your $100 was worth $37. 40 years later, your $37 was worth $6. 27 years later, your $6 was worth $3.83. Inflation is something that is built into the very fabric of our banking system. You see, things like subprime mortgages were basically problems with fraud. It's relatively easy to fix a problem like that. What's far more difficult to do is to rectify inflation. And by the way, inflation is not necessarily a bad thing, but left unchecked, it very much is. It means that the amount of money that you have today is going to be less tomorrow. It means that you're constantly running up a treadmill to stay where you are. It means that as the global economy grows, if you sit on your money, you're actually losing money. It incentivizes people to invest in the stock market to keep their money out of cash and in their investments so they can continue propping up the stock market, driving the economy. I'm not necessarily saying inflation's a bad thing, but it definitely does have its downsides. And it is very much a dangerous thing in certain crises and economic uncertainty, the likes of which we're seeing right now. If you don't believe me, you need to look no farther than your history textbook. Look at the Venezuelan petro, the Zimbabwean dollar, or the Weimar Germany Deutschmark. What happened to those currencies? They hyperinflated. Inflation itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's the danger of hyperinflation and the entire dissolution of the global economy that is the dangerous thing. By the way, I'm not one of the people saying that's going to happen anytime soon, but it is a threat, and it's not a threat that I personally feel comfortable living with. And that, my friends, if you weren't already aware, is where the halving comes in. Because of the halving, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in circulation. What that means is that deflation is hard-coded into the cryptocurrency, into the very fabric of the entire industry, is deflation instead of inflation. Many of the banking systems that we have right now can be built on top of Bitcoin, but without the component of inflation, without the danger of the entire global economy collapsing like a house of cards one day in the future when some kind of pandemic much worse than the one we're dealing with, maybe a meteor hits New York, maybe there's a massive global war happens and inflation runs away, the US dollar falls apart, and where does that leave us? Without money, the entire world shuts down. That's not a good thing. That's not something you want to look forward to. So let me be clear. I'm not trying to drive FUD. I'm not saying that's going to happen anytime soon. I am not saying that the world leaders are so incompetent that they would necessarily let that happen. But, you know, we've seen plenty of incompetence coming from our leaders. So I wouldn't mind having the safety net in Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. The last Bitcoin will be mined sometime around 2140. And because there's only ever going to be so much Bitcoin created, the inflation of Bitcoin is predictable, which means the entire economy surrounding Bitcoin is predictable. It means that the future is far more certain for Bitcoin than it is right now. Right now, in 10 years, we might be here. 10 years, we might be here. On Bitcoin, we are going to be here, and you can't argue about it because it's hard-coded into the DNA of the cryptocurrency. So why is the halving important? It's important for many reasons. I've talked about many of them on the channel. This is just one of them, and it's one I haven't discussed, so that's why we're talking about it here. Normally, I wouldn't have your attention 10, 12 minutes or whatever into this video, but I do now because this is a historic day. This countdown that we're looking at is counting down to one of the biggest fundamental shifts in the history of Bitcoin and is going to have untold consequences on the cryptocurrency. Let's look at the history for a second. It's November 26, 2012. You're dancing to Gangnam Style and debating with everyone about whether or not the Mayan calendar is going to actually predict the end of the world. A little-known cryptocurrency called Bitcoin is trading at $12.90 at the time and goes through the first halving. Within 133 days, the value of this cryptocurrency would jump 2,000% and rally from $12.50 to $270 at a peak. Over the next 365 days, Bitcoin would rally 10,000% as the experiment that is Bitcoin is being proven in the real world. Fast forward another 4 years. It's the 4th of July, 2016. Everyone's debating about whether or not Hillary is a lizard person and whether or not Donald Trump is related to the annoying orange. Bitcoin is trading 3,000% higher than it was during the last halving at $650. Immediately, Bitcoin goes through a 28% 4-week correction, which is where the idea of short-term corrections following halvings comes from. And then following that, Bitcoin rallies another 3,000% in the following 525 days. Between these first two halving events, Bitcoin rallied 5,000% over 4 years. Between the next two, Bitcoin would rally 1,300%. When you look at the history of Bitcoin on the logarithm scale like this, it doesn't look all that significant. When you take the log chart off, you start to realize just how far we've come. So let me ask you a question, guys. Were you here in 2016? Were you here in 2012? Maybe not. I wasn't. I joined the space July 31st, 2017. It was about 8 o'clock at night. I was watching YouTube videos, and I stumbled across a Crypto Nick video. But we're here now. Did we miss the 60,000% rally that happened at the beginning of the last decade? Yeah, I did. That's okay. I have to work for my money. Boo-hoo. You're here now. You're in Bitcoin now. We've been in a downtrend more or less for the last 2.5 years. What's 2.5 years among friends? Ask yourself a question. How much longer do you think you're going to live? You're going to live to 50, 60, 70, 80, 90? You got another 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? This might be morbid, especially for my older viewers. I'm 19. I'm very lucky to have my entire life ahead of me. But I have a feeling that the vast majority of you guys have at least another 10, 20, 30, 40 years ahead of you. Unless you get hit by a car or something. How long can you delay gratification? How long can you wait? How long can you strive? How long can you maintain faith in a project? You see, behind every single overnight success story, there are years of hard work that no one's ever heard about. We've been doing YouTube here for nearly 3 years. The first video on this channel went up November 16, 2017, well over 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now. For the first 8 months this channel was being run, I was flat broke. I needed the ad revenue that we were supposed to be making. Until we had 8,500 subscribers, YouTube didn't monetize us. We missed out on several $1,000s of ad revenue that I very much could have used at the time. And every single day, I'd get up and I'd make a video with no monetary return. Only thing I got was comments, which was awesome. Wasn't going to fix the problems I had at the time. Made me feel great. Don't get me wrong. I love reading comments. There's over 100,000 on this channel. I've read pretty much every one of them. But I would get up every morning, make a video, spend the rest of the day studying entrepreneurship, business, wisdom, mentors, reading books, watching videos, dreaming about the future for the hope and the prayer that one day it would pay off. I bet the end of my teenage years and my childhood on the dream that if I worked hard enough, I would have a future. And that's what I did. It paid off. I'm not here to tell you that the Bitcoin halving is going to make you rich overnight. I'm not here to tell you that Bitcoin's going to be trading at $20,000 this year, next week, next month, next quarter, because of the Bitcoin halving. I am, however, here to preach the gospel of Bitcoin and to tell you guys something that I have learned for myself. And some of you guys condescend to me in the comment section and say, oh, you're 19, what do you know? I don't know a lot of things. I'm a lot more humble than you are. But I do know one thing, and that is that if you stick with your guns for long enough, eventually, it's going to pay off. I don't care what you're doing. Starting an underwater basket weaving program. Somebody's going to start buying it. You combine diligence and working long with hard work, coming in every single day, never giving up, having diligence and faith in the process. You combine working long and working hard. You combine those two things with working smart, with being wise, with building experience, with growing yourself and working on personal development every single day. And you combine that with number 4, picking the right industry, putting your cart, putting your wagon on the right horse. You can have anything you want. So I'm here to ask you a question. Where are you going to attach your cart? I've attached mine for right now to Bitcoin. And let me tell you something, guys. 3 years ago, I was broke. Today, I'm very much not broke. It's because of Bitcoin that happened. 3 years can do a lot. Stop thinking about next week. Stop thinking about tomorrow. Doesn't matter. Are you going to remember in 10 years what you did today? I probably won't. I'm not going to remember what happened today unless something awesome happens. I don't think it's going to be an awesome day. If it is, I'll try and record it and put it up on YouTube. Probably not going to remember what happens today. So why do you care what happens today? Work your ass off and it's going to pay dividends. Guys, Bitcoin's not a get-rich-quick scheme. 1,200% that we saw in the last 4 years, That's not going to make you rich if you're investing $100. You need to work for it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take hard work. Bitcoin is not a buy it and forget it and be wealthy 100 years from now kind of thing, because you have to have capital to do that in the first place. It is, however, a whetstone that you can sharpen your sword on. And that right there is why I love Bitcoin. The fact that the halving is here is just one of many things that I love about Bitcoin, and one of many reasons that I've decided to work so hard in this industry. And I hope you guys see that too. So guys, I want to hear in the comment section down below, are you excited about the halving? What do you think is going to happen over the next couple of weeks? There's a very specific reason I didn't tell you in this video where I think Bitcoin is going to be a week from now, because that's not the point. That's not what I'm here to preach. Guys, I'm tired of everybody getting so caught up on the short term. The short term is important. I like making swing trades just as much as the next guy making 50% on a 25x 2% move. I understand that. There's nothing wrong with that, and I love doing that. But it all reminds me of a friend of mine who's starting a business, something he said. He was telling me about what he wanted to do with his online training business, and he was telling me about what he wanted to do way off in the future, and he said, Jeb, it's fine, I'm sorry, I don't mean to put the cart before the horse. And I stopped him in the middle of his tirade, and I said, no, wait a second. You got to put the cart before the horse sometimes. Because if you don't put the cart before the horse, if you're not thinking about what you're going to do in 10 years, how do you ever expect to get there? If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to go there in the first place. Bitcoin's a lot deeper than you think it is. It's a lot more than clickbaity thumbnails and all caps titles. It's just how the game's played, guys. You know that. Don't make the same mistake that a lot of people my age and in my generation are making. Don't live for today or tomorrow. Enjoy today or tomorrow. Live like you're going to die tomorrow, sure. But don't forget about where you're going to be in 10 years. Because the decisions that I make 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they affect everything that happens to me today. And the same thing will be true in 10 years. So guys, with that said, that is going to wrap it out for this video. I hope you did enjoy this special video on the halving. We will be back to charting tomorrow and discussing the short term. But I want to make sure you guys understand the importance of the long-term outlook. And in fact, how important it is to put the cart before the horse sometimes. And know where we're going. We're going places, guys. We sure are. But as always, I do just want to first thank each and every single last one of you for watching, and I will see you guys